Call to order. Would you please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Martha, would you lead us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for allowing all of us to gather here tonight and in good health and sound mind. Father, I pray that you would give us wisdom, that we would do things the way you want them to be done and according to your plan. And I pray this in the name of Yeshua Messiah. Amen.
Amen. Roll call. Please.
Counselor Howard,
Here.
Counselor Locke,
Here.
Counselor Lorenz,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Segola.
Here.
Mayor Becker will not be joining us this evening, but has been excused and a quorum is declared.
Are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right, the approval of consent agenda, minutes of regular meeting from January 5th, 2023, and review and approval of accounts payable.
I move to approve the consent agenda minutes of regular meeting from January 5th, 2023, and the review and approval of accounts payable.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions? Edith?
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segola.
Aye.
Motion carries to approve the consent agenda.
All right, we're gonna head on down to citizen comments and special presentations. Citizen comments, City Council welcomes your unscheduled comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Council will not take action at this same meeting. Are there any comments?
Sure, in the gallery in the back there had something to say.
Oh, they had nothing to say 3 minutes ago.
But then we got started, now we serious.
All right. Scheduled appearances. In order to be included on this portion of the agenda, please file the appropriate form with the city clerk no later than noon on Monday prior to the meeting. We have A, Berg Hill Greenleaf Risketti Law Firm for the water augmentation. Sure, would you like to come up and state your name for the record, please?
Good evening, I'm Jeff Williamson from Berg Hill, Greenleaf Risketti.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for having us this evening. I have a presentation. I don't know if
Yep, it's coming.
is there a way, will they have it on?
It'll be on the board over here.
Okay.
Is there a place to sign?
There is, yeah.
Please, if you will do that.
Okay, there it is. So I am here as the city's water rights counsel. Also here with me tonight is Megan Gutwein, another attorney at my firm, and Jordan Dimmick, who is an engineer with FGM Consulting, and we will each be speaking to you a little bit about different aspects of the city's water rights and water supply planning. I know that there's varying levels of expertise among council members with respect to water rights. So my objective is to kind of give you an overview of what we've been up to, where we're headed, without getting too far into the weeds, but then certainly open any questions that you might have on things that we, details we want to understand better or other related topics. Brief agenda, we're just going to talk about some very high level basics on water rights in the valley. Monte Vista's situation, Jordan will speak to Monte Vista's water supplies and depletions from Monte Vista's wells. I will talk about the augmentation plan that is currently still pending before the water court and substitute water supply plan that we've had approved in the last 2 years. And then Megan will speak to some well issues that we've addressed over the last year and a half. apologize about the font on the slide. Just big picture, what are we talking about when we're talking about water rights? I mean, water rights at a high level, it's the ability for the city to take water from the river, from streams, from groundwater, to be putting it to beneficial use in the city system. The big players, the Division III Water Court, Judge Gonzalez and Alamosa, all of the water rights in Colorado are decreed by the water court. And so the court fixes the amount, the priority, any terms and conditions you have on using your water. The referee Nicholas Sarmiento, acts as somewhat of an informal mediator in water rights applications. So when you file a water rights application, it is typically in front of the referee. The referee helps any interested parties resolve their issues with the objective of entering into a decree that addresses other parties' concerns. Other big player is the Division Engineer's Office, which is a branch of the Division of Water Resources under the state engineer. They have technical staff here in the valley that are heavily involved in close communication with Rob Vance, with Jordan, about technical aspects relating to water rights and water rights administration. And then, of course, there are a host of other entities and organizations in the valley. The Rio Grande Water Conservation District, their sub-districts, which you may have heard of, other municipalities, ditch companies, the list is long, as you know. So that's just to set the stage as to who we're talking about going forward. Much of what goes on with water rights currently in the valley has to do with the groundwater rules that were approved by the water court in 2019. As you may know, this was sort of the latest effort in an effort to better regulate the valley's groundwater, in particular, regulate the confined aquifer to ensure that we're not taking more out of the ground than is being recharged in the long run, recharged from snowmelt and precipitation. Those rules were approved after a 4-year court battle. And it was, I think, a bit of a battle. There were a lot of parties involved, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the basic elements of it are that the rules create a new framework for replacement of stream depletions, and that really is aimed at wells in the valley. And so you generally need an AUG plan, augmentation plan, or a substitute water supply plan for the operation of most wells. There are certain sustainability requirements that are really aimed at getting the valley's use of water back to a level that was measured between 1978 and 2000. It's sustainable. And then there are also irrigation season criteria that allow DWR, the state, to set when the irrigation season begins and ends each year. So from the city's perspective, really, as I mentioned, the way to comply with the groundwater rules is to make sure you have an augmentation plan or a substitute water supply plan, which is way to think of that as its temporary version of an augmentation plan, or contractual arrangements. An example of that would be a contract with one of the Rio Grande Water Conservancy District's sub-districts. They have larger plans, replacement plans, with the idea of every water user not needing their own plan. So you can contract with them to provide augmentation water, and the city has done that with 2 different contracts. So that's kind of setting the stage as to where we were when the groundwater rules came about. Monte Vista filed an augmentation plan with the water court in 2016. So shortly after the groundwater rules had been proposed, but were not yet final. That case really sat along with a number of other cases without much going on for 3 years while the water court hashed out the final rules and finally approved them. So even though the case was filed, but it seems like a very long time ago, 2016, not much really began happening until 2019, 2020, once the rules were approved and things were moving again. And I will talk more about the case in particular, but before I get into where we are legally, Jordan's just going to speak to Monte Vista's water supply situation and the depletions caused by Monte Vista's wells.
Thank you for having me this evening. Jordan Dimick with SGM. So, as many of you know, groundwater is a critical resource here in the valley for lots of different entities. And so, from a geologic perspective, it's kind of the northern part of the Rio Grande Rift. So you've got two mountain ranges that are pushing apart, being separated. And over the years, that's filled in with sediment. At some point, there was an intercoastal waterway that deposited a lot of clays and then more sediment on top. And so what you have is, large uplifts on either side and a ton of sediment that holds water in between. And so most of the valley relies on this water resource. And so the wells that go beneath that clay layer, those are called the confined wells. There's kind of that clay layer acts as an impermeable boundary. And so those tend to be pressurized. So you think about the artesian wells in the valley you hear about, that was the wells that were drilled below that clay layer. And then above that is the unconfined. And those are more directly connected to the streams and creeks in the area. And so it shows up. But the city has 8 wells. Wells 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8 are confined. So that's the deeper aquifer. And then wells 5, 6, and 7 have historically been used for irrigation, Chapman Park, the golf course, and the high school ball fields, respectively. And those are the unconfined, so the shallower aquifer. So the question you may have is, why does Monte Vista need an OG plan? I think Jeff did a good job of setting the framework. At a high level, when the groundwater is being pumped, it is somewhat connected to the streams. That confining layer actually is a little leaky. And so when you're pumping down at depth, it ends up depleting the surface water on top. And so what happens is that Colorado's use of the Rio Grande River is ultimately controlled by a compact with New Mexico and Texas. And so Colorado has specific requirements within that compact of what it can use. And because of the continued development of groundwater, the state realized that the stream flows were being diminished and the lower states were being shorted water. And so the groundwater rules really get at, we need to make the surface flows whole and keep the downstream states where they need to be. And we can either do that through reducing pumping or curtailing it, ceasing it completely. This graph here that you see on the left, that's the annual diversion that the city has had. On the bottom, the numbers are small, but it goes from 1970 to 2020. And so the height of that bar is basically the volume of water that the city has pumped each year. And you'll notice that in the early 2000s, there's a marked decline in water usage. 2002 was the historic drought statewide. The city wanted to implement some water conservation measures, and they put in individual meters for users and then charged accordingly. And so there was an immediate decrease in water usage. And so since then, water use has kind of varied year to year based on irrigation demand or individual uses. But it's stabilized and much less than it was historically. Quick overview, in the upper corner, you'll see Del Norte, and then you see Monte Vista's got the star. The dark and light bold lines, those are the stream reaches that are modeled within the groundwater rules. And so the state developed a complex groundwater model. And what they do is they put in every entity's pumping, and then they see, based on certain regions pumping, where is the water depleted throughout the whole basin down to the state line. So the upper portion starts in Del Norte, goes to the state line, and then you've got various tributaries. So those red numbers that you see in bold, that's the number of acre feet that this model run showed were being depleted from Monte Vista's use a couple of years ago. You'll notice right above Monte Vista, there's a blue number in parentheses. That's an accretion. Basically, the wastewater coming out of the plants over replaces or has more volume going into the river than is being depleted in that reach. And so what the augmentation plan and the various contracts will allow is for Monte Vista to have those shortages replaced where they need to be, and they can continue to legally pump the groundwater in the future. So the last thing I wanted to talk about briefly was annual usage by the city of You're concerned, will the groundwater rules curtail and reduce the amount of water we can pump? Within the groundwater rules, the state said that based on the modeling between 1978 and 2000, they considered that a sustainable use of water within the valley. And so that they look at those historic uses to set the bar as what is sustainable. And when the meters run, it comes after that. And so there is an opportunity for the city to use more water as needed in the future, increased demands, growth, whatever it needs to be. And that sustainable pumping period, the average annual diversion was close to 2,000 acre feet. So right now it's a little over 1,000, so can't quite double, but there's still use to or opportunity to legally use water.
If you go back to the map where you have the equation.
So,
So you have that, is that just generally assigned or is that geographically meaningful?
yeah, so it's a great question. The red diamonds are the nodes of the model.
Right.
Those numbers that we modeled every year, what the city will need to do is put in last year's pumping and what its projected pumping is. The state combines all of those parts, and then they have the model is complex. They have Excel spreadsheets that you put your numbers into, and then it tells you what your depletions are. So we ran this model a few years ago for the substitute water supply plan. And these volumes correspond to the depletions a couple of years ago, but every year the city will need to calculate that.
But the equations are 905. So what does that mean where somebody bring back more than you take it out?
Below the wastewater treatment plant. And so I'll let Jeff speak a little bit more, but there's a contract with the Subdistrict 6 that allows basically those accretions to be used other places to offset the depletions. So it is.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
So on the sustainability, the state's given us 10 years where they're saying, I mean, in the actual rules, we actually have to maintain sustainability, which means getting the output back to 78 to 2000 levels. We got a 10-year phase-in period where they're letting our diversions mimic that. So as long as we're less than 78 to 2000 diversions, you're okay. Have you given any thought to what happens after 10 years if that's no longer allowed? If our diversions are no longer the metric used?
Short answer is I have not thought about that, no. But you're right, there's a ramp up period. And the way the rules are written, they have the right to go back and revise and reflect. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think, what we have set up here is to deal with the rules as they've been, passed and approved, and the division engineer is, even over the last couple of years, is figuring out that there are issues in administering it that perhaps they had not anticipated. So it is definitely, as much as we like to say, this is how it is, this is what we're going to do, it's certainly an evolving work in progress. So legally, where are we? I know there's probably questions. What's going on with our water court case? What's going on with the audit plan? 16 CW 3024 is the preliminary water court case that we filed in 2016 that lays out all of our augmentation plan claims and changes of water rights. As I mentioned, it was kind of sat in limbo for a few years until the rules were approved. There's a number of different elements to it, all folded into the same application. Includes changes of agricultural ditch rights that the city has owned, using those as a replacement supply, an augmentation supply. Includes exchanges of water, so exchanging some of those ditch rights up to Rio Grande Reservoir in particular. And then overall describing the plan as to how that will replace our well depletions in time and amount. We crafted it with as much flexibility as possible so that the city can also rely on contracts with the sub-districts. And so actually we have done that. The city has entered into contracts with sub-district number 2 and sub-district number 6 I believe the sub-district number 6 contract is, as Jordan mentioned, uses the wastewater treatment plant accretions, essentially trading that water to the sub-district in exchange for augmentation water from them. We have also, which I'll get into a little more, we have operated a temporary substitute water supply plan to store water in Rio Grande Reservoir. So we've actually already done that over the last two years. So all of those things are in this water court application, which of course, there's a lot of detail from a technical standpoint. There's a lot of different claims. A number of other municipalities have filed similar cases, many of which are still pending. So we're not alone in sort of having to go through this process. Anytime you file a water court application, other water users can file statements of opposition. This is the list. I think there's one more that was added. Colorado Parks and Wildlife actually just entered the case last month. But as you can see, it kind of covers a range of different types of entities. The Rio Grande Water Users Association only has one line on there, but they actually entered the case as a party themselves, and then several of their member ditch companies entered as parties, and each of them have somewhat distinct interests and things to address. So we have been working with each of these parties individually to try and resolve any concerns that they may have with our application. As I mentioned at the beginning, so the case is before the water referee. So we haven't set foot in a courtroom. This is all things that are filed on paper, exchanged between the parties, and we've met with several of them with the goal of really saying, okay, opposers, what is it that you care about? What are you seeing? What we're proposing to do that may injure your water rights or gives you cause for concern? Let's see how we can address that. And we've entered into stipulations with, I think, over half of the opposers at this point. And by stipulation, really what you're doing is you're saying, here's a form of a decree that we would want the court to enter, and it has all the terms and conditions that you, the opposer, would want in it. So it's a negotiation with each of these parties individually. That's ongoing and continuing. I should note that the state and division engineers are still in the case. They're, I'd say, the most involved party. They, given their role, have a interest in making sure our decree is consistent with other decrees, making sure it's something they can administer. We have made excellent progress in the last couple of years in addressing their concerns and the concerns of others. So really where we are right now is continuing to talk and negotiate with those remaining parties to see what terms and conditions they would like to see in our decree to make this work. So ideally, we reach an agreed upon decree, we submit it to the court, and all the judge really needs to do is sign it. If we can't reach an agreement with all the other parties, the referee could refer the case to the judge, where it gets on what we call a trial track, which is much more like you would think of typical litigation, where the case is set for trial and we work towards that. I don't foresee that happening in this case, given where we are, but I just wanted to let you know that's sort of the pathway that it could take, in some cases do take. I just wanted to note, so as I mentioned, while we've had this water court case pending, the rules actually required water users to be in compliance by March 2021. So if you hadn't received a water court decree yet, which many parties have not, you need to file a substitute water supply plan, which is something that's approved by the division engineer's office. So it's an administrative approval. We actually are already meeting almost all of our obligations for augmentation with our contracts with the sub-districts. However, we applied for substitute water supply plans so we could run the exchange of changed Anderson ditch water up into Rio Grande Reservoir. And so we've been able to do that, and actually as of December have 282 acre feet, pretty much filling up the city's available capacity in the reservoir. So we're not going to be running that this year because there's no space heading into the spring. But that's been an excellent way to actually work with some of the ditch companies and the division engineer's office to kind of test run things that we are seeking approval for in the water court case, if that makes sense. It's kind of a mini version to say, okay, let's get into the weeds and see how this works. And it did work. So that's been good. And I think has served as a good template and has helped us reach stipulations with a number of the ditch companies.
So on the substitute water supply plan in the court case, for the changed water of the Anderson ditch. Have you just set it up for the city's use, or have you set it up that some districts can use it for replacement of depletion?
The Anderson ditch is just for the city's use, for the city's augmentation use, right? Yeah, there's no, and so that water really, we're seeking to change it for a laundry list of future purposes, but it really is for augmentation in terms of its immediate need.
I just, if we're working in conjunction with the sub districts, and we've already filled up our space, and we have this water, well, and we're not gonna use it this year. Seems like we should have that in this to be a piece, so that it doesn't just go to waste.
That water, yeah, you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying that the ability to,
So if we set it up the same thing, instead of just augmentation for the city's use, but augmentation for the sub districts 2 and 6, say, since we're partners with them anyway. Then we could still call the right, and instead of exchanging in the Rio Grande, they can do the replacement depletions in the time.
sure, yeah.
And they have lots of storage space in Rio Grande Reservoir that they won't used.
Yeah, and actually we have not, Jordan and I have not really had a chance to talk in more depth about that. Kind of filled, our space filled up before we knew it. We didn't necessarily expect it to get full by the end of the year, and we haven't really had a chance to say, okay, what are we doing with that? But that's on our list, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna let my colleague Megan speak to a couple of well issues that came up in the context of working through the augmentation plan. These are some items that we realized the city needed to take care of. So there have been some other water court cases that have worked their way through the system over the past year.
That was much faster than Jeff has been. With these. So the first one is that Monte Vista's well number 6 was placed on the 2020 abandonment list. So every 10 years, the division engineers will go through all the water rights, find the ones that they think aren't being used and put them on an abandonment list. But they have to show, in addition to a long period of non-use, they also have to show an intent to abandon. So we filed a protest on behalf of the city because what actually happened is that well number 6 was originally decreed in the wrong location. So the decree listed it in a section where the well does not actually exist. So the division engineer thought the well wasn't being used. We did stipulate with the division engineer in the abandonment case. It has been taken off of the abandonment list. Now all we have to do is finish our application to correct the decreed location of that well. So we are working on that right now, and it's actually almost done. So this is just a map that shows it shows the location of the actual well where it is in the decreed location. They're just not in the same spot. So in the separate correction application, the only thing we're doing is changing the listing of the decree location. I had a conference with the water referee, I think last week, and he said that he's prepared to enter a ruling in that case, so we should see that pretty soon. The second one was well number 7, and this one was not put on the abandonment list, but Jordan discovered that there was a similar issue in that it wasn't listed in the decree in the correct location. So we decided to go ahead and take care of that one too while we were at it. So we filed an application to correct that one. And it's the same thing. I talked to the referee. He's ready to enter a ruling. So we should see that soon. And then I just have the map here showing that it's just not where the decree says it should be. So to avoid future issues, we're taking care of that one too. And I think that was it for our presentation. So if you guys have more questions.
So Megan, I've got a question. Now that you've said that we've got 2 wells that are on the wrong location.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes back decades and decades and decades. So is this, when a well is drilled, I guess, who? We're gonna say this is where it's at, whoever drills that well.
Mhm.
Doesn't the division come out then and verify it, or how could this happen?
I think actually I think well number 6 was a typo, if I'm not mistaken, because the application in the original decree listed the correct location and it was just off by a quarter section. It said southwest instead of southeast. So I think it may have been a typo in the decree. The other one, it just happens sometimes. Now I think the division will send someone out more often to verify locations, and we have better equipment to find the locations, but it still happens that it'll be listed wrong.
Were they permitted wells or just registered after that?
I know they were decreed and they have permits, but I don't remember if the permit came for after the decree off the top of my head.
Sometimes wells were drilled. And no one knew they existed until they were registered with the division. That could happen years after the fact. And the division just took it, okay, you told us where it's at.
Yeah, it's not unusual. We've had to file a lot of this.
And then can we use the well number 7 to still flood, like maybe the golf course?
Well, number 7 is decreed for irrigation. So I don't remember. In the decree, I didn't see a place of use listed. I don't know if the permit limits where you can use it. Jordan might know. You do know?
It could be used for irrigation at the golf course.
Okay. Okay. And then my other question, how much water then, how many water rights does Monte Vista have as based upon our population? How big can we grow and not worry about water?
That's a good question. Who wants to take that?
Because growing we are.
Did you say that?
I think that as Jordan's graph earlier showed, most of our supply is from wells, and so our current well pumping is at a level below where we could take it to. Assuming, and it is an assumption, that the state will stick to that 1978 to 2000 period as being the baseline for calculating what's sustainable. As Jason alluded to earlier, that's not necessarily set in stone. It is now, for now. So I think I'm not ready to speak to numbers in terms of how many, what can the city's population go to. I think there is some room. I think we have, with the contracts with the sub-districts and with the ditch rights changed, I think there's some room to keep that pumping at a level higher than it is now, or to be using more water than we're using now. There's some hurdles to go through to get there. But I think that's all I have to say about that now.
So we should be, as far as our long-term vision, be continuing to look at potential water rights to purchase.
No. Our issue isn't, our issue is sustainability. We have, with our depletions, you saw the number, we're creating 900 acre feet. Our depletions aren't even near that. So as long as we have agreements with sub-districts, we're covered on depletions, and sustainability is our issue. Which, right now, we got room to grow as long as they keep to the diversion implementation of some other metric.
I agree with that. Yeah.
One other consideration is that the city has water rights with some of the ditches that it has not changed, or actually withdrawn from the original application. It could be used for irrigation at the golf course. We also did a water efficiency plan for Monte Vista, and so there's specific things that the city's identified could do to use its water more efficiently. And so I think combination of those two could stretch groundwater supplies to the extent that's sustainable in this town.
The contracts with number 2 and number 6. Is that right? Are an integral part of our substitute water supply plan. How long do you anticipate those having to go on? Those contracts? Will we get final approval of our augmentation plan or?
I think that was our intent for at least one of them was to be covering us in the interim, but frankly, I think both of them we intend to rely on long term. And I think because of particularly I think the one with number 6, because of the location of depletions that contract is replacing, it's replacing depletions that I don't think we have right now. We don't have another source for those ones.
So how do you feel about the reliability of those contracts in future times?
I feel like they are, I feel confident in their reliability, particularly those sub-districts. I think there's always, when we're talking water, there's always future uncertainty to some extent, but I think those contracts are about as reliable as we could find.
And one point of clarification, sub-district 2, the contract was to just replace depletions associated with the unconfined aquifer. So where that depletes is the Rio Grande. And that contract does terminate once a decree is entered, which is part of the reason why we wanted to get the water in the Rio Grande Reservoir. So the day after that decree signed, water can be released to meet that. So we're in a good spot specifically with the unconfined well pumping depletions in the future.
Okay, and then do you guys want, I'm sorry, you done? Would you give them a little bit of a synopsis when you guys were here earlier this summer, and then what the city did to help Consolidated, keep them happy with the water?
Sure. Yeah.
I can speak to it, I'm sure you can. Yeah. So as part of the substitute water supply plan operations, going into, I believe actually, Jordan and I, we met with Consolidated in 2021 and 2022. Basically, when we submitted our substitute water supply plan application, the whole, the purpose of that is to use changed Anderson ditch water for augment to store that in Rio Grande Reservoir. Anderson ditch water is taken through the Consolidated Slough headgate. That's the point of diversion off the river is from the Consolidated Slough, which then serves multiple ditches before flowing back into the river. Our Anderson ditch right then has historically been diverted through the Consolidated Slough and then into the Anderson for irrigation. I think the Valley Choice property and Trosper Farms. So in order for this to work, the Consolidated Slough folks and the Anderson ditch folks said, well, wait a minute, there's going to be water that's not getting diverted. The division engineer is saying, how are you going to measure all of this? You need to be, it's easy to measure what goes into the reservoir upstream, but how are you measuring what you're not taking? And this is somewhat of a complicated situation because of the fact that it's not just one ditch going off the river. It's, all of this water for multiple water rights coming off the Slough headgate and then being diverted. So we met, Jordan and I met, and Rob in early 2021 with the ditch companies and with folks from the Consolidated Slough. Gigi met with us and them in the field at the beginning of 2022 in spring. And we went out there both times to the Consolidated Slough headgate structure with division engineer staff, with engineers and attorneys for the ditch companies to put our heads together on how is this going to work? How can we do this in a way that works for the state, that works for what we need, and that works for the ditch companies? And we got there, and what we did end up I think having to, what we ended up doing from an infrastructure standpoint, we did end up having to install a measurement device on the Anderson ditch head gate, right? And then I think the slough head gate, we are not paying for, the city's not paying for any new infrastructure, but we have compensated them for some of the time that they've taken really to help us make this work. So it's been, hasn't always been easy because there's different interests and goals that each party has, but we've gotten to a point where we have good working relationship with the slough folks and the Anderson Ditch Company folks and the division engineer staff, which are also important to have good cooperative relationships with. Is that what you were?
Yep.
looking for?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to just thank all three of you because you've had to drive a long way and it's so much more personable for council, for you guys to be here in person instead of trying to do it through Zoom. So thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome. Yeah, I prefer to be here in person. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
It's in good shape. Good letter. It's a long process.
Next, we have the CDPHE and SCP plans.
So we came to you all months ago and talked about the fine that we were being assessed through CDPHE because we weren't in compliance with our permit at the wastewater treatment plant. And CDPHE, instead of us just writing a check, said that we could go into a plan that they had to pre-approve that would not directly benefit the city, but would evolve around conservation efforts. And so we submitted a plan to them to do a solar project at Tri-County Senior Citizens. State said yes, and it has just been a very bumpy road. So we've had problems with, one, we don't have any structural engineers here locally that could take on the project, that could give us an actual evaluation or assurance that the solar could go on the roof. Tri-County did not want the solar on the ground. We offered to go in and on their third story, cut a hole into their roof, into the ceiling, so that the structural engineer could poke his head up there and do his assessment and give us his opinion. In the meantime, Tri-County has merged into it has merged in with the South Central Seniors. So now we're dealing with a new board. And the new board, we've probably worked 6 weeks, 6 weeks or so with them, trying to say, hey, give us permission to get up into your ceiling. We'll come back in, make sure it's stuccoed properly. We'll repaint the whole ceiling. It'll look great. We can't get them off the dime. In the meantime, CDPHE has been nice about it, but wanted this whole project completed by the end of the year. And now we're into January and we're still no farther than we were 4 months ago. So our recommendation to you is that we write the check, we pay the fine, we do away with this and not mess with this any longer.
How much is it like?
$80,000.
Would you consider, why do you think you have to put it on Tri-County? Why couldn't you put it somewhere else and do community solar and essentially credit Tri-County to your citizens with the output of that? I think you saw rules about that. It's called community solar.
So at this point, Councilman Howard, it is, you know, for us to kind of go through the same hoops again and get their approval, it's just been rather challenging.
Well, I don't disagree that, you know, let's just pay the bill and be done with it. I'm just wondering why we didn't look at this. And maybe you can't answer that.
Well, and I think we explored options. Rob, can you jump in here and?
Counselor, to kind of answer that question, is the SEP program is a very specific program where you actually have to apply with a very specific project in mind. The SEP program, the one they wanted us to go with originally was a approved program that they had where they wanted us to put solar on 5 homes. That wasn't really acceptable for us. So we proposed something that had a little greater advantage to a facility that dealt with a more senior population, and that was the idea. And it took us almost 9 months to get that one specific project approved
With CDPHE.
with CDPHE. So in order, we've already signed a consent on order. So in order to go back now, we have to go all the way back to step 1
I'm not
to change any aspects of it. So at this point, since we can't seem to get any traction to go forward, we're just kind of at the stage where I think for all of us, it's just at this stage where we just pay the fine and move forward so we can actually get into the design stages. Because we still have to, we need to get your approval tonight, because you have already approved the COC, which is our consent order, that our consent on compliance order that was issued by the state for the SEP program. The council's already approved it, so we need your approval, and we still need to get the state to sign off on the amendment to allow us to stop the SEP program and go ahead and just pay the fine. So.
And on top of it, this, you know, or in addition to, the state wanted us to use energy resources, the Energy Resource Center out of Alamosa. And Charlie Sanchez has been very patient and said, okay, let's get this done. I've got other work to do. I've got other projects. So we've squeezed you guys in now to all of this because it was originally said that it would get done in August. And so Charlie's fine with saying, yeah, I take it off my plate because we don't have kind of the capacity with our other projects that we're taking on. I've notified Carla Schreiber, who has been the acting director and part of the and head of the board, I believe, of Tri-County Seniors. And so I've told her our recommendation tonight was going to be that we just take this project off. And she says, I agree. She said, just trying to blend these two boards has been a little bit more challenging than what they had anticipated. And so Rob and I are just saying, please let us take this one off our plate. It's just.
Well, thank you very much for your explanation.
So you're asking for a motion.
Yeah.
I make a motion that staff. Maybe staff. Yeah, fine. What was the fine for?
It was for non-compliance with our permit out of the wastewater treatment plant.
Make a motion.
CDPHE.
The CDPHE violation with wastewater treatment. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions?
I absolutely understand you wanting this off your plate. I get that. $80,000 is just a lot of money.
It was gonna be $80,000 in solar. I mean, it wasn't like.
I know, but I mean, $80,000 and not get anything for it.
Well, we sort of do in some way indirectly because CDPHE and this, when you pay fines, they go back into like a revolving fund that then is distributed to municipalities or water districts that have to apply for loans and grants through their department. So it's still helping,
Something other entities.
right?
Any other questions? Yeah.
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segala.
Aye.
Motion carries to pay $80,000 for the non-compliance for the wastewater facility to CDPH.
All right. We're going to recess our regular meeting and go into our public hearing. We're gonna hand that over to Jean.
This is a public hearing. Therefore, town councilors, this is designated as a public hearing on the sign code, and then I noticed down here, we've got ordinance 917, an ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20, well, reenacting Article 20 of signs and murals. So this is sort of a combined thing, as I understand it. We don't really, when we pass these ordinances like this, generally, we don't have sworn testimony, anything like that. So I'm not used to these being listed as public hearings, as only as ordinances, but I'll be glad to do it like that. So just by way of explanation, this is an ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20 signs of Chapter 12 zoning and reenacting Article 20 of signs and murals. I think you recall, we already passed the ordinance on murals several months ago. And so murals were a type of sign, but really a different division in here. So we split out the ordinance and the code to two divisions, one being signs and one being murals. There was a lot of information back and forth on this. DJ did the yeoman's work of all of these regulations and the revision of the sign code. A lot was taken from the previous sign code. A lot was consolidated down. I don't know whether you have been able to go through the entire sign code or not, but I did have a couple of items that I wanted to bring your attention on this as we go through it. 12-20-30, the last paragraph, signs shall not be placed on the public right of way. So you need to know that this will change probably the habits people have had, because these little medians next to the property right there are generally public right of way. And traditionally, you know, those political signs have been blocked down, just like your Head Start signs you find, and even yard sale signs and all of that. So that will probably, just talking to staff about this, we would probably require the code enforcement officer to go and remove those signs and put them, tell people to put them only on their private property if this is enacted like that. So that's something I wanted to bring your attention on that. And the issue on canopies, I was talking to DJ about this a little while ago, and canopies are allowed in the CB zone, so there are probably a couple of places where those canopies could be placed that would not be in public right of way, like in the medical buildings, for example, we have. So that would be one example, but for the most part, when you place a canopy is something supported by poles as opposed to an awning. So when you put that in the downtown business area, that doesn't really work. Now, discussing this again with DJ, the attempt there, I guess, would be to prohibit that because of infringement on the public right of way, and obstruction of the public right of way. So I guess that's the way that would be handled, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. The issue of billboard signs, to me, this is a type of freestanding sign allowed in the CB as well as the CH area, but I'll let DJ address, the differential there, how that works if he wants to do that. Windsocks and motion windsocks apparently would be allowed under this. Is the way I read the code. So those are just a few points I saw in this as you consider this, and since we're in the public hearing part, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I got some things. Yeah. Good evening. So we worked real hard on this sign code to make it permissive, but maintain rules and regulations that kept it safe, made the city beautiful, and those kinds of things. So, and also enforceable, which is a huge thing for us. I don't want to put any more code out there, and I don't want to revise any code that's going to be unenforceable. We currently have windsocks. You're not authorized to have them, but we don't enforce the code that says you can't do it. So take that out and allow people to have the signage that they're already doing. Because I don't see like the burrito sign that Polished Bean has as a detriment to it. As long as it's a good repair, I don't have any issues with those things. And Planning and Zoning Commission, which Barb's the chairperson for, and Lauren sat on the panel for pretty much the entire writing of this. So we kind of agreed on those things. The awning, it's two different things. Okay, I'll allow a visit to have an awning as long as it fits within like the rules and regulations that exist. It can encroach on the right of way. So Nino's isn't going to be able to place one up front that goes to the curb because then it would encroach on the right of way. It's two different rules. But if we were to tear down the old American Legion building and build a restaurant there that had the setbacks that allowed for the space to create an awning to go to a wash space, that's why we don't want to restrict the awnings out of CB, because there are places where it could work. So again, we try to make the sign code permissible for the future, but also make it have good rules and regulations. For the political signs and those things, that's going to be, what is the city manager and you guys as city council enforcement. We didn't change that portion of the code. It actually says the exact same things it said before. You've never been able to put signs in the public right of way. We just don't enforce that. If we want to enforce it, by all means, let's move forward and enforce it. And I think we probably should, so that we can clean up some of the signage. But it just means that the code enforcement officer has to be consistent on his enforcement. He can't just enforce that against political signs or just church signs. He has to enforce against all signs. So that's why those are in there the way they are. And again, I guess give you guys a staff report as well. What we really did was we tried to clean up the language. There were some circular arguments in the old sign code. There's some things that just really weren't clear. So we made it clear, concise, and as permissive as we could with keeping in spirit what we wanted line to look like. The only other thing that's on there, and I wrote a staff report on it because there's a paragraph involved. When we did this, we just did a fee review. And this didn't go to planning and zoning because I was doing the fee review separate and we had already finished the sign code. But I've looked at several counties and cities around the state for what's a good permit fee for signs. And it is all across the board. Holy wow. Like everything from nothing to $300, $400 for a sign permit. But I did run across one idea that I thought was a very good idea for Monte Vista. To possibly implement, which I would like to add to the sign code, if you guys agree, which will eliminate the sign code or the sign permit fee. And place a fee for $100 on the landowner for someone who does not get a permit. Right now, if you do not put a permit, if you do not get a permit, basically nothing happens. Like, hey, you didn't get a permit. Okay. That's pretty much the end of the conversation. But then you have the people that are doing the right thing, that are paying the money to get the permit, and they're actually losing money, whereas people who just put a sign up they're not feeling anything from it. If you look at the letter I gave you guys today for the staff report, you can read the paragraph I recommend adding in 12-250 bullets A, which would remove the cost for permit fee, but add $100 fee to the landowner for failure to get the permit. If they fail to get the permit and it's non-compliant, they have 30 days to remove it, and then would revert to the nuisance code. And then they would end up getting a summons to come see the judge about their nuisance. I think that is a much better approach. It rewards the guys who are doing the right thing. And it punishes people who are, going around the system. When we do the first reading, we can amend that in between now and the second reading, if that's what you guys would agree to, think, right? Yeah. So yeah, check everything, because I'm not sure on all of those things yet. Still learning. So that's my suggestions on that. Is there any questions on what his concerns were? Or on the changing of this? No.
We don't have a lot of sign permits going out.
I do probably 1-2 a month, depending. We've had quite a few going in recently, with some changes of businesses. We've worked really hard on some enforcement, replacing some of the damaged signs. And that enforcement has actually just been a, hey, can you go ahead and fix this? And they've done it. So Gigi's done a good job of thanking them and making sure we're keeping that good report for businesses. So that's all I have.
Thank you, DJ.
Do we have any further comments, public comments on the sign code? I guess the way to do this, if no further questions, is to go ahead and close the public hearing and defer down to when this comes up on the ordinance 917.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and close our public hearing and go back into our regular session. All right, looks like we're gonna go down to our ordinances. Ordinance 917, an ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20 of Chapter 12, reenacting Article 20 as signs and murals.
So I'd like to read this just title only, unless you guys really would like me to read all 23 pages.
Sure. All right.
You've already read it a couple times. Mark. He said you've already read it a couple of times.
Excuse me.
I got 2 bottles of water with one.
Okay.
It's fine.
So an ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20 signs of Chapter 12 zoning and reenacting Article 20 as signs and murals. Whereas the city planner of the city of Monte Vista has recommended significant changes to Article 20 signs of Chapter 12 zoning in Monte Vista Municipal Code, and whereas the Monte Vista Planning Commission has reviewed such recommendations and determined that such changes should be recommended for implementation by the Monte Vista City Council, and whereas the City Council has determined that such changes would be beneficial to orderly growth of the city, and whereas City Council recently passed ordinance number 913 murals, which should be integrated as a separate division of Article 20, and determined that Article 20 be titled Signs and Murals. Now, therefore, be it ordained that City Council of Monte Vista, Colorado, that Article 20 signs of Chapter 12 zoning of Monte Vista Municipal Code will be repealed and reenacted as follows: Article 20 signs and murals.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 917. An ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20 of Chapter 12, reenacting Article 20 as signs and murals, with one amendment to include section 12-2-50A, which eliminates the fee for permits and assesses a fee to be assessed on the building owner if a permit is not obtained. First.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Nita?
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segala.
Aye.
Motion carries to approve ordinance 917 on first reading. An ordinance of the city of Monte Vista repealing Article 20 of Chapter 12, reenacting Article 20 as signs and murals with the amendment added.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna go down to contracts, agreements, and leases. We're gonna look at the transfer of entitlement funds from the Monte Vista Airport to Craig Moffett County Airport.
All right, council, tonight, this is more of a, it's an informational thing. Each year, the FAA pools money to provide, projects for its sponsor airports. And the way that usually works is like every 2 to 3 years, us as a sponsor airport, we get a larger project. And during those 2 to 3 years, we transfer our 150,000 that we normally get to a different airport so they can do a larger project. And that way we're able to kind of capitalize and get some of these bigger projects done. So this is one of our transfer years, and as it said in the title, we're transferring our $150,000 that we get this year from the FAA over to the Craig Moffett Airport. So I just more, like I said, more or less, I don't know if a formal motion is necessary or not. But it's just more of an informational that our FAA funding is being moved from Monte Vista Airport to the Moffett Craig Airport this year. The agreement is signed by the city manager and by Gene Ferris, our city attorney. So,
What was the last project that we did
last project we did was
here?
the apron expansion. We expanded the apron in the taxiway. We created the 90-degree taxiway coming off the back of the airport, and then we expanded and created more parking for the airport out there.
Do we have another project we're looking at?
Right now, this year, we're doing a fuel farm out there. So that actually got started today. So that's a $358,000 project this year.
But
And
so
then-
people transfer money to us to do that, or?
This is actually a state-only project, so the state, CDOT Aeronautics is providing the funding for this one. So we do last year and this year our transfer. Next year, we have a project done, which is another expansion of our taxiway. And then in 2028 is our big runway project.
To do what?
So we have to expand our runway, we have to widen it an additional 60 feet, completely redo it. So that's like an $8 million project.
It's like 5,000 feet. Isn't it?
It's, yeah, it's, yeah, a little over 5,000 feet.
So we haven't had a fuel farm out there before?
We have a fuel farm. It's actually cobblestone. There's some upright fuel tanks. And then an old gas pump that was brought out there. So this is actually doing the right self-contained fuel system. The actual tanks are really supposed to be set up. Yeah. So
So it's getting private pilots
That's it.
out there and buy fuel off of it.
correct. Yes. Yeah, there's a card reader and everything out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob.
The one.
Next up, we have the Clark lease.
So this is the lease that we had on the agenda last time. Councilmember Lorenz asked that we put something in there that allows, if we need to cancel the lease and sell the property, we can do that. And so Jean did write a paragraph that does that portion of it. I just heard at like 6:02 tonight that the Clarks got back to me. They would like something included that says if we would sell it, that they have first right of refusal. So that's not in the language right now. And if you guys are okay with it, and if Jean will just stick one little sentence in there in regards to it, then I think we're good to go. And if you recall, this is to lease that property that belongs to the airport for 15 years. They do pay us a lease rent on it. The lease will go up a little bit every year until the end of it. And then for Councilman Howard, this property was purchased with funding from the FAA. In order for us to not just want to sell it, they have to encumber that and we'd have to pay them back. And it's really a big hassle. So the chances on this would ever get sold is nil to none. And
That's not what I was concerned about. I was concerned about if the FAA had a requirement that we needed that space back,
right,
that we had to put a cancel the lease.
yeah,
And Gene did have that.
Well, what is the last they use it for?
grazing. And so they needed the lease had been just year to year, but they needed a multiple year contract so that they could apply for some grants, primarily through the National Conservation Services, NRCS, Natural Resources. And so they've made, Rob and I went out there, met with them, they drove us around, took a look at the property. You know, a lot of it out there is just Chico bushes, and they've done a lot of improvements with getting some native grasses to grow and obviously something so that their cows have something to eat. So,
How much land is it?
oh,
So you need some mountain.
18 acres, I believe, not very much. So,
Motion to approve the Clark lease
thank you.
with
With the-
amendment, giving them right of first refusal. If we sell it back.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions? Nita?
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segola,
Aye.
motion carries to approve the Clark lease with the amendment to give the Clarks first the right of refusal.
All right. Next up, we have the HUTF.
Alrighty, another annual thing we do. This is with the CDOT HUTF, the Highway Users Tax Fund is annually, we have to certify the mileage for the roads within the city of Monte Vista. And unfortunately didn't get in your packet, but I'll read it to you. So tonight, I'm asking council to certify that there are 7.49 miles of arterial streets within the city of Monte Vista. 22.008 miles of local streets for a total of 29.498 miles of highway users tax eligible streets. Those are streets that we actually receive funding for. And 0.24 miles of non-highway users eligible streets maintained by others. That would be Sherman Avenue and Lariat Road going out to the west. And 0 miles of non-HUTF eligible streets that are not maintained. So the 0.24 miles of HUTF eligible streets that are maintained by others are Sherman and Larry are both maintained by the county. So I just need the city council to approve the certification of the HUTF. And it's signed by the mayor, in this case, Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Motion that, Mayor Pro Tem be authorized to sign the HUTF certifying the streets that,
That the mileage is accurate.
is accurate. The motion, somebody.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions?
Just for my curiosity, I wasn't writing fast enough. Would you give me those miles again? I got 7.49.
Piece of paper.
Okay. Okay.
So the mileage is, the big one that's necessary is there are a grand total of 29.49, so basically 29.5 miles of road within the city of Monte Vista. That's what we need to.
And that's maintained by Monte Vista.
That's what we need to.
Okay, and there's 7.49 miles.
77.
That's highway.
That are, no, those are arterial. Well, those are what main roads. So Second Avenue, Sixth Avenue, those would be classified as arterials. Those are designed to get people as quickly as possible from point A to point B. In our town, that's relatively, because speaking of some 25.
So it's been moved and seconded. Nita?
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segola.
Aye.
Motion carries to approve the HUTF.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Next up, we have the Excel Energy DC fast charging site host agreement.
I need to plan this agenda better so that.
Can you just sit there, you know?
I know,
No, she's supposed to be at the party. It's
So-
supposed to be one.
So you've got the contract that Excel has provided us in regards to the electric charging stations. There's gonna be 4 fast charging stations put on the corner of Jefferson Street and 160 in our city parking lot there. Would you call them the transformers?
Yeah, they would basically be a transfer. I don't.
Lauren might know the real term.
Decepticon.
Yeah, the power source behind them are like 4 large refrigerators. They,
The one that guarantee the 480 hour.
Well, so these are DC fast chargers. So you have to change AC power to DC power. Now that's a big rectifier, we call it rectifier.
so those rectifiers will be along the alleyway. They'll be set back so that, you know, it won't deter from anybody pulling into the alley or exiting the alleyway. Excel will maintain them and own them. And this is, I can't remember the exact amount, like a $950,000 investment. So
Awesome.
that the city's not putting any money towards.
I have to come up with it.
It's city stuff. Big stuff.
Because we just put a DC fast charger, if you want to see one, I mean, I don't know, if it's the same model, but we used to put one in our offices. So that's a big refrigerator size sort of thing.
I'll come out and look.
I mean, that was $100,000.
With that, this is way kind of off a little bit, but would that also provide the power that it would take for like the little scooters that people are using
No.
now? No,
Not specifically just for.
it would just be for the cars.
Yes.
Cause I'm just thinking people coming and plugging their cars in, I really wanna get them downtown
Well, they'll be right next.
to have something, so it'd be nice to have something right there that they could just get on and buzz around town. But, so I just wondered if it could be a multi-use.
No.
Okay. Okay. It was just a thought.
So we just need to a motion.
Scooters would go really fast.
Can we have a motion, please?
I make a,
Go ahead. No, please go ahead. Cause I was just gonna say so moved. To approve the city of Monte Vista lease of city property to
Excel.
install.
Peter and Leah Clark.
No, that was the last.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the list. I looked it
It
right.
was so moved and seconded. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, what did I just approve? I'm gonna-
Excel Energy DC fast charger here, site host three. That's it.
Thank you. So
I'll second that.
It's been moved and emotionized. Moved and seconded. Are there any other questions?
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segola.
Aye.
Motion carries to approve the Excel Energy DC fast charging site hosted.
All right. And doesn't look like we have Anita here too for financials?
No.
No, okay. We're gonna go right on down to staff proposal reports and actions. Planning.
Wait.
Oh, first we have an announcement. Yes.
One thing really quick. Sorry to butt in really quick.
No, you're good.
Just wanted to bring forward to you guys' attention that the Rio Grande County Commissioners would like to have a luncheon with you all. They would like to do that on February 6th. Will that work for all of you?
Is it their turn to pay this time?
Our turn. They paid last time.
Yeah, no, I was kind of.
That will work.
Yeah.
Lunch,
Lunch.
What time?
And I'll send out an
12.
invite
so that's
lunch. And I will send out an invite to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Mr. Andrew.
Hello again. Okay, so, first, the ones that were able to attend to the meeting, I know that you were sick. Mayor Pro Tem. But the ones that were able to attend the meeting on the 10th, I greatly appreciate it. I think we got a lot of great things done. And some of the things that we gained a consensus on over there, I'm gonna ask for a vote on today. Just because some of the things are gonna make it easier down the road for me. So the first thing I'd like to address is I'd like to pursue a grant from DOLA in the fall for in order to fund a master plan for the calendar year of 24 to begin the master plan process. And part of that process is saying I have the city council approval to go ahead and go after a grant for that, because I have to include that in the grant packet. So I'd like for you guys to take a vote if possible to approve me to pursue a grant for a master plan in 2024.
How much is that grant?
I have absolutely no idea. at this point.
Okay.
Like, at this point, I want to pursue the grant and figure out like where that's at. When I get a little bit closer, then I'll be able to give some financials and some understanding. Talking to our DOLA representative, she thought I could get a 10% match and she didn't think it would be very hard. So I think I should be able to fund it off of next year's budget, and it will be on next year's budget.
a 10%.
Yes. Typically they want 25, but I was able to argue that we are poor and I'm able to get a lot of money. It's all about how you ask.
Do you have any sense of like what
So what?
the master plan would, what that would cost?
Um,
Would be some sense.
100,000.
yeah, it's 100,000 is probably somewhere between 100 and 150,000 probably.
Just curious, is there any idea or anything that you have in mind for master plan 2024?
Yes,
Right on.
Absolutely. I have some definite like ideas and stuff. And some of that, like we discussed, I'm sorry, you weren't there. You know, how are we going to finish the Pintada intersection? What are we going to do for some of our infills? Do we need to adjust some of our zoning? You know, do we want to shrink our commercial business district? Do we want to expand it? Do we want to change some of our things that we have there? So there's a lot that we could be discussing there. Do we want master trails? Like all these things could go into that. And a lot of it's going to depend on what the public wants. I'm hoping that when we do the housing one, we'll get a good amount of public input. And then we can continue to get public input as we move throughout the master plan process and just kind of keep that public engagement rolling. And then after we finish the master plan, my next request will be for another grant to rewrite the municipal code from front to back to get everything caught up and match what we put in the master plan, get current language and all those things. And that will be in probably 2025.
Sweet. So what do you guys think about him pursuing that grant for Dolan?
Do you need a resolution now?
No, so when you submit the grant, you have to have something that says that Senate Council has approved you to go after it. And so that's what I'm gonna look at, it'd be in the minutes.
Have you written the grant application?
Like this one, no, I won't write until the fall. So
Just approval to go.
I just want to be able to approve it. I also don't want to spend time, if you guys don't want me to do it, I don't want to spend time getting the grant ready and writing. Like, you guys I don't want to spend time this spring and early fall getting ready to write the grant if you want me to go a different direction. So this is also you guys saying, yes, you want me to work this way because it's going to take some, like, it would take me a couple of weeks at least to write that grant and get it all done.
What do you think, city manager?
Oh, definitely. We need a new master plan and that's one of our challenges with some of the federal money that's coming down right now. Is they want shovel-ready projects. And so what a master plan does is it identifies projects that we can say off the shelf, we've already had this in our plans. And so we want to go forth with building, changing, whatever.
Our current
I'm
master-
gonna go ahead and move to give him permission to get the grant. So that we can have this discussion. And keep things in order, so I,
Sure, until we need a motion.
yeah, you need a motion in a second and then we have discussion.
Because then I'll take the minutes and I'll put the minutes inside the grant application when it's complete. It shows that you guys gave me permission to do so.
Me making the motion is not saying that I'm for or against it, it's opening the floor for the discussion that we're already happening, but we should.
And
Anyway,
our
so I
current-
moved to give you permission to write up, to ask for that grant.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there more questions?
Just to clarify, if you guys do have questions, our current one is 2016, it was a joint with Rio Grande, and it's terrible. It has no actionable items, doesn't have, like, it's not a plan, it's some shiny ideas and a lot of history, and that's all it's in the plan.
Now, what year was that written?
2016.
That was the last master plan we had?
Yes, ma'am, and before that it was 2008. And that one wasn't bad.
It's been moved and seconded. Either.
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Locke,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Segala.
Aye.
Motion carries to allow planner BJ to move forward with pursuing a DOLA grant for a master plan for 2024.
Okay,
Do
second,
you plan to still have, I'm sorry, you have to say. Is there any discussion?
No, we already went through. We already voted. It's already approved.
Oh, okay. Then we're done.
What do we got next?
second, we discussed having planning and zoning work on updating municipal code to provide clear and concise and permissive codes pertaining to fencing during the January 10th meeting. And I would like you guys to, I'd like to task planning and zoning with that from you guys. And I just want to make sure that that is in fact what you guys would like to do. So I would like to, I don't know if I need to vote on that one, or if I just need you guys to be like, yep, please ask them to go ahead and start writing that code.
I think you just need
Yeah.
to start writing it up and.
Okay, good.
All right,
And then you let us red pin it.
yes, you can start red pinning and then I'll just delete the red pen and move on. Okay, so now we got that way, updating on what P and Z's progress is, for current projects. As you heard earlier tonight, we did finish up the sign code. First reading will make the 1 minute, the second reading done at the next meeting, which will get that complete. So that's taken us about 6 to 7 months from start to finish to get completed. We have finished the 3 mile plan, which you guys reviewed at the meeting. That'll come before you guys on February 16th for your guys' official approval. On January 26th, the planning commission will have public hearings for a minor subdivision and an ADU. As well as they'll review an ordinance prepared by city attorney for non-conforming houses in the commercial business, commercial highway and industrial zones. So that would get reviewed by planning and zoning. I've read through it a few times. I don't see a whole lot of questions that I have for it. So we'll see what planning and zoning comes up with. And then hopefully we'll get that to you in February as well. Outside the planning and zoning commission, work continues as usual. Recently, the city was awarded a $10,000 grant from the Snort Institute to work on our water conservation and landscaping ordinances and policies. Last week, I submitted 5 small grants totaling about $121,000 without a matching requirement to Homeland Security for fencing around critical infrastructure. We'll hear about that in the near future, and that included 3 water pump stations, as well as soft targets of the Sky High and the PD parking area to fence all those projects or fence all those areas. I'm continuing to work on digitizing the historical land use documents. And then me and Rob are going to work on reorganizing and remodeling what is now the map room, which has a nice map case we got from the Forest Service, and we'll go ahead and get that so it'll be a little more organized and be able to find all our maps again. Additionally, the state just passed a new statute that requires us to update our building codes. So Rob, Gigi, and I are working with multiple municipalities and counties to get our codes. What we're trying to do is get all the counties and municipalities to have the same codes so that it doesn't matter where the builder goes, it's the same standard. And we're also working to make sure that all the updates are something we can actually accomplish. So we're working on what we're going to amend out, what we're going to accept, and go through all that stuff. So at some point in the future, in the near future, we'll have a working group with you guys for a work session to cover what the new codes mean and what it all says. And that's important because if we don't adopt a new code between now and 1 July, we will be forced to take on the 2021 codes, which we do not want. They would be very hard to support with both our infrastructure and they're expensive. The new codes are very expensive. So we'll get together with them and we'll finish that out. We're kind of drafting the ordinance and some work session information for you guys. And then other than that, just day-to-day work, trying to move forward with future planning. If you guys don't have any questions, that is all I have.
So to tag off though, what DJ was just talking about with these codes. I went to Representative Martinez and asked him if he would try and buy some additional time for the rural communities. And he went ahead and had a bill drafted, and Senator Simpson is his co-sponsor. And so what we're hoping is that this July 1, 2023 deadline is moved. We're still going to have to comply, but it gives a little bit of a cushion and some breathing room before this all takes place. Rio Grande County does the Monte Vista, Del Norte, and South Fork building inspections. We're operating under 2006. So to jump to 2018 is a big leap. No one though can really put a dollar to quantify how much that costs in additional additional costs to the cost if you're building a new home or if you're remodeling your current home. The importance of getting everybody all on the same page in the San Luis Valley is because we all basically use the same contractors. They circulate all over the place. Castilla County and Conejos County don't have any building restrictions in place currently. So for them, it's a big leap. So CML will likely be supporting this bill to help support the little counties. I believe CCI will be supportive. We talked to CRHDC, who's doing the self-help housing. They usually comply because they use federal funds with the most current building codes anyway. So he said it's really not going to impact them on the building project, but that they would be happy to come and make comments in testimony about just the affordable housing in general and what we're doing to kind of jump all over this. If you read any of the news about the governor's state of the state address, it was really interesting because he talked a lot about we have to do something about affordability in the housing area across the state. And yet the legislature continues to pass laws that impact the cost of building and just add them. And so what does affordable mean? You know, and how much regulation can we all continue to take on under the guise of affordability or energy efficiency or so. But both Rob, DJ, and I are sitting in on those meetings, listening and trying to figure this out.
And it has been a very interesting, and I've learned a lot from doing it because I didn't know much about building. And there are some things in there that's like, we started out with, I'm like, there's no way as a homeowner I can do that. So as we move forward into 2026, we have to move forward again. And that's talks about having solar ready and EV ready homes. Every home when it gets remodeled or when they do a new build must be EV and solar ready. And we're not even close to ready for that. So stepping in the right way, Randy Kern's working on a phased implementation, which will help builders slowly get into the right mindset and like the right building practices and get all the things right in order without an immediate jump where they're going from building a loose house to only 3 air exchanges per hour. So a lot of things like that. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Sky high.
Right, so in your packet, we did put together a 2022 statistical analysis of what Sky High was able to accomplish in the first 11 months that we were open. So I'll give you a little bit, but you can definitely follow along in your packet. So total number of events that we had in 2023 was 176. The most we had in 1 month.
22.
Yes, sorry, my numbers.
A little tight.
Yeah, sorry. This was a lot of numbers for me to look at one point. I'm not as good as Anita. The most number of events that we had in 1 month was in June, and we had 30 events that month. So that was a great way to start out the summer. That kind of correlates to the number of days that we had events booked. So on some days we could have up to 4 or 5 events in one day. That doesn't necessarily mean or calculate out to our days booked. So in 2022, we had 171 days that we had events at Sky High. So a lot of those were kind of broken out. The next couple of pages just gives you a breakdown of the different types of events that we held and how many per month and equals out to the total number of events that we had for those specific types throughout the year. Towards the bottom of that, you'll see that I kind of broke out the city events. So we do not charge any rental fee to any of the city events. So any other department, recreation, public works, police department, we don't charge anything for those. So that just kind of gives you an idea of events that we don't make any revenue on. And this year, or this first year, was a little challenging because we were still doing construction and we still had contractors on site. So that red section down there kind of gives you an idea of how many days we had to block off and not have events because we were having construction work. So our most popular events throughout the year were business meetings. We had 49 of those. Baby showers, we had 7. Birthday parties, which excludes quinceañeras because those are a whole different ballgame. So just regular birthday parties, we had 13. Educational trainings, we had 18. Weddings, we had 6. Quinceañeras, we had 5. Rodeos, we had 7. Food distributions, we had 17. And recreation, we had 8.
What is the food distribution limit?
So we work with Karen Chair, and they do their monthly food distribution out of Sky High.
What's going on today?
Yes, it was. It's a very long line, and they start lining up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So that next chart just kind of gives you an idea of all of our different events. I'm a very visual person, so I love my charts. That just kind of gives you a different viewpoint of it. The next one kind of gives you an overview of attendance per month for all of our different events. July obviously is our biggest month because we do have all the Stampede events and everything associated with that. But for the first 11 months, we had just under 50,000 people on site for events. So definitely keeping us busy. Again, some of those were estimated costs, so we could be a little off on that, but we did our best to try and track as many people as we could. The first couple of events, we were able to track out of state license plates to kind of gather some of that. However, that became a little bit too much to handle as we got more events going on. We were, yeah.
That's
The reason we were able to track some of our hotel viability and how many out of state people we were getting to come through Monte Vista. Paper, I mean, you know.
We took these ideas from other facilities.
Yes.
So other people are doing.
There's all.
Absolutely. So then I broke down our building revenue a little bit differently. My numbers are going to vary from what Anita has presented to you. My numbers are strictly for events held in 2022. Anita's has been anything that's been paid in 2022. So a lot of our events that are in 2023 have been paying in the previous year. So that's why our numbers don't really match up. Again, July is going to be our biggest income month because we do have Stampede in that. Overall, we're just over $92,000 that we made in building revenue for events held in 2022. I broke that down a little bit further into damage deposits that we kept. That could be anything from an excessive cleaning charge, or majority of that was if they had confetti or confetti balloons that required cleaning. Confetti is something that we agreed would not be allowed at Sky High. So anytime we do have that, it's an additional charge. So we had just under $1,000 that we kept in damage deposits for this first year. And then I broke that down a little bit further into police department security. So for a lot of our events, mainly quinceañeras and weddings, we did charge for off-duty police security. And those were for any event that had alcohol. We do require security. So they, excluding Stampede, because I have nothing to do with the security for Stampede, it's just under $6,000 that we brought in for that. And the last sheet in that report is going to be our expenses and utilities. So I did break that down by month for most of them. I will make a note that that does exclude supplies. We did start from scratch, so every pen, piece of paper, roll of toilet paper. So there was no way for me to really track what our monthly usage on that is going to be just yet. I'll be able to track that a lot better in this year in 23. And then it also excludes staff salaries. So I did include any overtime pay in that, but I didn't put our staff salaries in there. So utilities for all of that was just over $105,000.
About covered.
Until you throw our salaries in there and all of that other stuff. But I feel like that's a lot closer in the first year than we even thought we would be. So I'm happy with those numbers.
Xcel Energy, June was $29, August was, they give us money back.
I have no clue. I just put the bills in there. I can look at that a little bit closer. Our Excel bills are also,
Kinder, gentler.
Pardon?
It's kinder, gentler. Oh,
Excel bills are a little tricky as well, so it doesn't just include the building. We also pay for the lights out in the arena, the lights out in the softball fields, the McMullen building, so it's a combination of the whole property. So it's not just the new building.
We pay for the electricity at the McMullen building.
There's an agreement out there that we pay for some of that goes out there, because that sign out there, the digital sign is hooked up to the McMillan building. And that savings might have been a refund that Anita found for that solar farm that the city pays into. But they're supposed to give us a rebate off of it.
So we have given some.
We're supposed to, Anita found that we weren't getting some of that rebate, and she thought with it and we'll be able to get some for us.
Any questions about the report? So now that you know those numbers, let's get into 23's numbers. So as of today, for 2023, we have 187 events on the books, which scares me a little bit. For January, we had 41 events as of right now. We still have 14 more for the rest of this month. And we keep adding more and more every day. From January 28th through the mid of September, so kind of that second, third week, we have at least one event every single Saturday, with the exception of 2. And I see those 2 Saturdays booking up quickly. So any Saturday, you can stop by Sky High and find us there. Since quinceañeras and weddings are some of our larger events, I just wanted to kind of give you those numbers. So far, we have 6 quinceañeras booked and 5 weddings. So those are quickly adding up and becoming the go-to place. Today was Oscar's last day, so we are starting our interview process to hire some more staffing out of Sky High on Monday. So if you know of anybody that's interested, send them my way.
Age requirement, 18, right?
We're looking into some alternate options for some part-time work for some high school kids that will start at 16 to do any after school or weekend work. I just haven't gotten that far just yet, but that will be coming. We did start our open walking program. So Mondays and Wednesdays from 8 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m. Anybody's welcome to come. Thank you to Durbin, who went out there and tracked 7.25 laps is 1 mile. You can go out there, take your laps around. Several people from the city have been out there. We've had several community members. We're hoping to grow that program a little bit more. The dates and times will change every month, just depending on our event schedule. So we're hoping to get that February schedule out here soon, but that's for January. And then we did start the process today with the company that won the bid to do the business plan for Sky High. So we'll be starting to get all of that information out to the community to start some of those informational sessions and surveys and all of that fun stuff. But it'll all be coming out in the next couple of months, and we're really excited to see where they see the future go. Questions? Awesome, thank you.
All right. Very good.
The first question I have to ask is, where's the camera at?
There's a couple.
Okay, because it took a picture of me last time, and I swear I don't have a bald spot. My wife showed it to me out from that camera picture. So, might have to turn and do it. But just to beat off the walking program, it's going awesome so far. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people. Anita, Rob are there every Monday and Wednesday. Have been coming, committed to walking. The mayor's come out and walked with me a couple times in the evening, so it's just something that's gonna build and something that's gonna grow. We're gonna invite some nursing homes as well as the Veterans Center to come out and walk with us as well. And so that program's just really taken off, gonna really be exciting with lots of good numbers. As far as Parks and Recreation or recreation goes, basketball program is going very, very well. We've increased our numbers by at least 20%. We have 2 first and second grade teams, and if you ever have a bad day at work, they play every Tuesday and Thursday. Go watch them play. It's awesome. It's hilarious. I asked the referees to look up a lot and not call all the traveling and all the fouls and whatnot. This one little boy, I'm still laughing about it. I mean, he rebounded the ball and just ran down court, weaving in and out like a football, you know, running like a football. And the referees looked at me and I'm like, now that's something you gotta call. You might have to call, but it's just a joy to go out and watch them play. So we have 2 teams there. We could probably have enough kids for 3 teams if we really wanted to do that, but the schedule is already out. We have 2 third and fourth grade teams, probably enough for 3 teams. 5th and 6th graders, we have 1 team, has 16 players, so we probably could have divided up into 2 teams as well. All the teams are doing very well in the conference and in the leagues that they're playing in. The first, second graders play over the elementary school. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 6th graders play over at the middle school. Just having a lot of fun with that. And Gigi's favorite, we have a little cheerleading squad. They're 4 to 6 years old, and they are so cute. Okay, I was supposed to go out and, you know, check it out, look at, and you know, on report, I come back with Gigi, they are so cute though. So it's pretty exciting. I will have them come cheer for you one time, do a cheer during my report. Now, they are just awesome. They're all practicing. Matter of fact, they're cheering at the first and second grade games tonight during halftime of both games. There's 2 games that are going on. And so they're going to be cheering at that. So, and they're so looking forward to it now, but they are so cute. As far as the floors go, we do have like an estimate, and I think it's in your report. We have an estimate for 2 different floors, 2 types of floors. One floor, the one that comes out for $86, is just kind of like a plain floor. With all the courts on it, it does have a volleyball courts as well as basketball. It's 2 basketball courts, not with pickleball. Never think of that sport. Set up for like 4 pickleball courts on each basketball court. And today I found out at a meeting, as well as by asking her, that Stephanie has a hard time saying no. So, but she's been great though. For everything that we've asked for out there, even roller skating that we may do out there on Fridays and that like once a month. And it's one of the things in that community awareness that lots of folks have been asking for, is for roller skating that out there. Of course, we would have to have everyone sign a waiver that goes in to do that, but it is one of the things that's been requested out there at Sky High.
Why can't you just incorporate that with your walking nights? And let them roller skate on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah.
No, there is a women's roller derby team in town that wants to get back together, so that has been thrown out there. But yeah, we can look at doing that too as well, incorporating, use the walking for the inside lanes and then the roller skating on the outside lanes.
City can have a team.
And it's been just a minute or 2 since I was a roller skater. Wasn't that wooden polished floors, not concrete?
Right, it was wooden polished floors, but most of the time the roller skating though is on a concrete surface. If you go to like the Springs in Denver, not most of those are concrete surfaces that they skate on.
Like little rocks on there.
So,
Wow. I'm glad I was on a wooden floor. I went to the hospital enough. I can't imagine doing it.
well, I won't be out there on it because, you know, number one, if I fall, I can't get back up. But the second thing is, I'm just not a roller skater. So that's basically it for right now. You know, just getting our programs going. We are starting to sign up for the men's basketball league or take registration for that. So our goal is just to increase the numbers from the programs last year. Last year they had 9 men's teams, 5 women's teams, and we really want to increase that. We did do it for basketball. And it's just a matter of getting the word out there to the kids, to the parents. We have parents who are still calling in now, wanting to register the kids for the basketball program. So.
You're
Short
gonna require helmets,
helmets for the roller skating.
please.
Just the waiver, just the waiver.
Any questions for recreation? Any word on the, so, the hardwood floors? I think the bids are due
The 25th.
the 25th. And so that's when we'll find out about those, but I've called lots of folks and that, and the guys that, some of the other folks that are gonna bid to replace those and that, we're calling folks too, and that, so.
And that bid will be in the paper on next week for 2 weeks. And the deadline for the new floors will be February.
And so Dervin, what's the difference between the two quotes that we've got in our packet?
The 2 different quotes in that, one quote is just kind of plain. It doesn't include like the sky high logo. And it includes more of a run out area, an area that, you know, runs off the courts. Basically the first one, the courts end, and where the courts end at, that's where the surfaces end at. And the other quote includes, like I said, the sky high logo, as well as the SLD strong will be on every court or both courts, both sides, as well as the logo on both courts. So that's basically the difference in the 2 bids. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. City attorney.
These are increasingly hard to actually follow. 35 cases in Muni Court this week. The judge was ill. So Anita and I kind of muddled through all that, and fortunately, most of the cases were pro forma and they could be resolved pretty easily. And Anita ended up with a lot of them just at the window out there, being able to resolve those toward the end. So anything that couldn't be resolved was kicked over to the next docket on the 15th, I believe. So that's the way Muni Court went this week. We have finished the sign code, working with EJ on that. That's been passed on first reading. And I have drafted the ordinance that he referred to already concerning the non-conforming uses, residential uses in commercial highways and commercial businesses in industrial districts. So the planning commission will have a chance to take a look at that, and basically just giving the residences the same that exist out in those zones, the same rights and classifications as if they were in an RL zone. Of course, they can't object to any commercial activity in that zone because they're still in a commercial zone. But that's the import of what the planning commission will be looking at in that particular ordinance. We will be meeting with the code enforcement officer on February 15th. Gigi arranged that meeting, and we'll be going over protocol for nuisance enforcement, dangerous building enforcement, things like that with that officer, how we're going to approach all that, which is a little different than the way you approach, offense ordinances. We've finished the Clark grazing lease. I'm waiting information on a taxi lease out at was that Curly's or was that the names of those folks that were applying on the taxi lease out there?
Yes,
Curly's.
Curly's.
So Gigi will be supplying that material. Those are the biggest things we've been working on. I'm glad to hear EJ mentioning that he's working on the entire code. I'm kind of jerry rigging my code here with pulling in the appendices, because this code doesn't really have any appendices to it. And the index and so forth. And I think when we get through with this, we ought to take a good hard look at going back to a format that really accommodates that with all the tabs and so forth. And I prefer the 2-column thing myself, but we'll talk more about that. I know it's going to take some time to do the master plan and all of that type of thing. So got a lot of work ahead of us. Anybody got any questions? Thank you.
I'm outing the staff if they can leave. They want
I mean, headed to the Bahamas side. Yeah.
Have a great vacation. Souvenirs, remember. That's good.
I'm just gonna keep my report really short. I thought we had a really good joint meeting with council and URA and planning and zoning, and I have one request that we do it maybe quarterly. So maybe we'll take a look at that as issues may arise and get that scheduled. I thought it was helpful. I thought it was some good conversation. Stephanie mentioned that we met with the Downtown Colorado Inc. people today. That is the business plan for Sky High and the hotel feasibility. And so that will wrap up in May, but it's going to be a series of meetings, and we put some things in there where they're gonna have to come and give presentations to you all and see what they're gonna be coming up with. And then the other one that we're working on, and they almost run into each other, and that's the rural recreation grant town meetings through the EPA. And those will all be at the end of February. So we're all pumping, trying to get a lot of things done, and there's no lack of resting right now. So I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you, Gigi.
You're welcome.
All right, council, committee, city commission, and council reports. Start down on the left over here, Martha. Got anything?
No, I don't need anywhere. Everything's good. It's all good. And but I say that a lot, so I'm gonna say it's all good.
What about
Keep going.
Mr. Howard? Lauren? Howard.
I came in the other day because when I was zooming in the other night, I couldn't hear it. When we had the agenda, I could follow the agenda in the packet, but when we got the executive session, you can't hear. So I met with Jim Belknap and came out and given my laptop to her. I have another thing to meet with Jim anyway, but I would like to suggest us looking at seriously upgrading video conferencing. I know Jim has sent me some information, Gigi has sent me some information on previous proposals. I think some of the numbers that I saw proposed were pretty inflated, in my opinion. I mean, we out of REC, we put in two 72-inch TV monitor with a really nice camera, and microphones or whatever, and that was under 10 grand. So, you know, as I just think we should seriously look at upgrading our video conferencing. I'd appreciate that. Right now, I'm not quite done with my gainful employment, but that'll come soon, so. But I'm sure there'll be times where I, not at council, can't physically be here, but would like to attend in a more meaningful way. That's my comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Jason, I'm good. You good? And I don't really have a whole lot either. It's cold out. Bring your dogs in, or hopefully give you some heat or something, you know. Look out for your neighbors, look out for each other. So, all right, we will adjourn the meeting until February the 3rd. We will see y'all then.